Okay, we live. So, as promised, I said I'd look at some of the candidates for new Tory leader because of all the chaos going on. And the media are going wild with speculation. But I was just looking at an article from Money Matters. Nothing has actually changed at all. We're still due to leave on March the 29th with no deal if we don't, if nothing else is on the table. Or we might vote for May's deal because she's going to bring it back again. So nothing's really changed at all. Everything is still up for grabs. Everything's on the table. A lot of the nonsense they're talking about, they're just kind of making too much of it, I suppose, just to fill the airtime. One thing we all know for sure, and that I'm saying, is that Theresa May is on her last legs as Prime Minister. So who are the potential candidates? Well, according to an article on Sky News, they were saying that it's going to be probably a Brexiteer versus a Remainer. It'll boil down to. The ERG will throw all their weight behind a candidate, probably Boris. So he'll be one of the last two standing. Now, why Boris? Well, he's got a brand. People know him. It's very important that. They even said, like with Hillary Clinton, with her running, the fact that everyone knew who she is, it's very important. He's already shown that he can win election like the London mayoral elections. And look how well he did at Wembley, that final speech before the referendum they gave at that big rally at Wembley. He does have a lot of charisma. And honestly, when I look at his chart, he's the only one that's got the ingredients that I am looking for in a leader of this batch, who are kind of woeful. So they're saying the ERG will plumb for Boris, and he might choose a Remainer like Amber Rudd to be the Chancellor to kind of up his chances. So I'm not too keen on that because I'm not a fan of Amber Rudd. She should have resigned last night, and it's ridiculous that she hasn't been sacked. So that I'm not too keen about. Then we've got Jeremy Hunt and Sajid Javid, who are they're called pragmatic Brexiteers. They may have voted Remain, but they really want to make Brexit work, or at least May's deal work, and they'll be putting themselves forward. There's also Michael Gove in the mix there. Jacob Reece Mogg, they weren't really talking about him as an option because he's going to throw his weight behind Boris. But I think you'd all like to hear a bit about him because I've been asked about him before. Andea Leadsom will probably have a go again. Now, I remember that during the Brexit campaign, she was really, really popular because she gave some excellent speeches. And when they were doing the debates, I remember Amber Rudd was really aggressive and, don't like to use this word, shouty. It's not a word as far as I'm concerned, but I know people use it. But that does describe Amber Rudd. And Andea Leadsom was so calm to put the case forward so logically. She did a wonderful job on the Leave campaign. And I know a lot of you that watch me were very enthusiastic about her. And you said, would I do her chart? I did it before. You'll find it if you go way back in my blogs. And I was very positive about her. She's even been to the same university, Warwick University, that I went to. And however, I think in her chart it said the time wasn't right for her, and I'm not sure if the time is right still. She's kind of gone off the boil. I don't really feel she's done anything strong enough for us to have faith in her. So I'll talk about Amber Rudd. I'm going to be talking about Jeremy Hunt, Sajid Javid, Amber Rudd, Jacob Reece Mogg, Andea Leadsom, Boris, and Michael Gove. I've already done Corbyn's chart before. I think he was stronger back in 2017. He's gone off the boil. The vultures have been out. They're using this anti-Semitism around the same way that they use the Russia allegations against Trump to kind of sideline him. He's a minority in his own party. So I think there's some big problems Jeremy has got, not least what I was saying in my other blog about being totally two-faced about his manifesto promises, which are totally incompatible with the stance he's taken in terms of the EU. I think his chances have gone begging. Okay, let's get going. So Jeremy Hunt, he's a Scorpio, and he has Sun-Venus conjunction in Scorpio square Jupiter. Now, when I started off looking at these charts, there were a couple of things I was looking for. I like to see synergies with the United Kingdom chart because it does show then this leader will have a big influence on the United Kingdom. You're also looking for some Saturn because you want to see influence of strength, resilience, determination, endurance. You want to see Pluto because these people need charisma. They need to have, power. I also want to see Mars because they've got to have a fair amount of aggression. It's a competitive world out there. You need people who get up, fight your cause. You need the fight of Mars. And I'm not too keen to see very much Neptune, and there's some signs. I'm definitely looking for cardinal signs because the UK has had more cardinal sign leaders than any other mix. So Jeremy Hunt being Scorpio, it's quite rare for the UK to have a Scorpio leader. Now, I was rather concerned there. He's got Moon in Sagittarius opposite Mercury. It's got, Moon is opposite Mercury. His Moon is in Gemini, opposite Mercury in Sagittarius. Now, with the Sun in Scorpio and a Moon in Gemini, as particularly because this Moon is opposite Mercury, I just have this feeling that he's a little bit immature and naive. I also think that because of the influence of Scorpio with the Gemini Moon, he allows emotional matters to get in the way of his judgment. So I think he lacks judgment. I think when push comes to shove, he can't be relied on to jump the right way. With this Gemini Moon, I also feel that there's a kind of people-pleasing side to him, particularly because of the Sun conjunction with Venus. And he looks for the easy way out. I think he wants to be popular desperately. Sun square with Jupiter. He wants to be, he wants to be popular. He wants to get on the good side of people. He's definitely looking for easy answers. Politically, I just don't think he's strong enough. I don't think he's conniving enough. I don't think he has enough wherewithal of what's going on. He's not a shrewd enough mover. He's too much of a pleaser, looking to bring people together, and definitely looking for easy answers. I think there's a little bit of laziness going on there, and definitely immaturity. So when I looked at his chart, I think, oh, he's probably a nice guy to date. If I saw that chart, I think, oh, I wouldn't mind going on a date with this bloke. But I wouldn't be looking at that chart thinking, wow, here is a potential leader of this country. It's just a little bit too soft. While I'm reassured with the Scorpio thing going on, the rest of it just doesn't inspire me. And looking forward, I didn't see any major transits that suggest that he's going to be. I think he's peaked as Foreign Secretary. And look, he hasn't really been very effective in that, has he? One thing I don't have is Boris is the only one that I have a time for. So Boris is the most accurate of all these charts because the others are missing a time. Then we move to Sajid Javid. He's got a lot of planets in Sagittarius because he is a Sagittarian. So he's got Sun, Mercury, and Venus in Sagittarius. And he has Mercury square Pluto. So it does show that he's capable of political kind of conniving, scheming, thinking deeply. He's very analytical. The Sagittarian placements, I felt that he has a good grasp of the law. I'm not sure if he is a lawyer. I guess from this chart he probably is. So coming from a legal standpoint, I think he knows what he's doing. I do feel he's a bit of a globalist. His perspective is more global. I don't see a lot of kind of a patriotism in him. So I would guess his natural leanings is to be a globalist. A couple of other things that worried me about Sajid Javid here is that Venus conjunct Neptune, yes, and Mars square Neptune. Now, Mars square Neptune is a big warning sign. There's a lack of determination and a lack of resolve there, and a lack of him knowing his own mind. He seems to be another Theresa May. She suffers from her Mars being afflicted by Neptune. And we've seen her red lines don't mean anything. Her promises don't mean anything. She can come out and say, no deal is better than a bad deal, time and time again. And in the next breath, ask people to vote for no deal. That is what you get when you've got Mars square Neptune. These people are talking from both sides of their mouth. They've got no conviction. They're just going along kind of. You can't go into debates and you can't lead a country if you don't have conviction. I don't think that would make him, for me, a candidate that's not entirely trustworthy. Something else I thought about him as well is he's incredibly opportunistic. So we have this whole thing with Shamina Begum. Now, I'm not going to say I'm an advocate of hers. I think she behaved in quite a conniving, selfish way. She's shown no remorse. It's still clear that she supports the ideals that she went out there for. But at the same time, Sajid Javid is choosing a 19-year-old girl with a baby to pick on and two other girls that he's going to take their passports away. It's a little bit small to do that when you think about it, because so many males of fighting age that have been fighting for ISIS, they've been jihadis, they've kind of wafted back in, slotted right back into everyday life. They could even be receiving benefits, and he's not done one thing about them. He hasn't been very strong on that, but he decides to pipe up and be strong when it comes to, to a woman. Now, I do believe a tough line should be taken on these things, but at the same time, who is really going to be more threatening? A woman with a baby, or not anymore, but or men. So I think in that case, he showed what sort of person he is. And so he's definitely not someone, I think, that has got true conviction, true courage, and true strength of character. He's going to look to make the easy decisions, to make himself look good, and he's going to not have any compunction in changing his mind. Okay, next we've got Amber Rudd. Right, Amber Rudd is a Leo. Okay, so that is probably where it all ends in terms of her leadership ability. She's got Sun square Neptune. I'm concerned about that as a leader, because I think that sort of person doesn't know where they stand. They're also a person who lacks a true sense of their own identity. So therefore, I don't see her as a patriot. I see her as a person who's going to go for something that she feels gives her identity, like the EU. I don't think she's got enough moral courage or a great enough sense of herself to stand up for something. I don't think she can face criticism. I think she'll just go along kind of, oh, it's safe with the EU, that's where we'll stick. The other thing I'm concerned about is Mercury opposite Saturn. Now, she is quite a doer character. If you've heard her talk at conferences, she doesn't come over with a lot of appeal or charisma, hasn't got much of a sense of humor. She seems to be a bureaucrat. She's a rubber stamp kind of politician. She likes to stick what she knows. I don't see a lot of creativity or great ideas coming out of her. It's a case of sticking with the very safe option, which of course she would see as the EU, probably because she doesn't have the creativity to think of the options that could arise beyond it. Now, she does have this Saturn opposite Uranus in her chart, and that indicates an inconsistency in the way she behaves. It also indicates a kind of dictatorial attitude. Those sort of people who have that rarely practice what they preach. So you just could never be sure with her. Plus the Sun square Neptune thing, you couldn't really rely on her. You couldn't think that this is a person that's going to follow through and deliver, because you couldn't be sure the last minute she's going to get cold feet, pull out. It's not the strength of leader we're looking for. Often people with her placements are quite oppressive. They want freedom for themselves, but they tend to not want freedom for other people, which says a lot about Remainers, doesn't it? There's a lack of common sense, and I don't think she can command the respect of her subordinates. I think the people under her will always want to rebel and won't respect her. So you can't have a leader who other people don't look up to, and I just don't think she would be that person who people looked up to. She's not projecting with enough power or strength or conviction to get it. Okay, Jacob Rees-Mogg, it's an interesting one. He's a Gemini. Now, it's sort of interesting because we've got Jeremy Corbyn's a Gemini, Boris is a Gemini, Jacob Rees-Mogg is a Gemini, Donald Trump is a Gemini. It's a kind of unlikely one for politicians, yet we're seeing an awful lot of it. The trend seems to be for Geminis. So Jacob Rees-Mogg has got his Mercury in Gemini retrograde opposite Mars in Sagittarius, and he's got a moon in Virgo. There's an awful lot of the mutable signs going on here. He is definitely a thinker. What concerns me about Jacob Rees-Mogg is I'm not seeing a lot of Saturn or Mars. So he's great at thinking, he's great at planning, he has his ideas, but I wonder where his heart is, because he's not a person who thinks with his heart, he thinks with his head. It's all very intellectualized. And I find his whole demeanor is a little bit fake. I mean, what really is that all about? He's a throwback or something, I don't know, but he's kind of putting that on. The other thing that concerns me about him with these placements is I wouldn't like to be in an argument with him. I think he can be ruthless. I think he can absolutely tear strips off you. I think he's an incredibly critical person. He comes over as ultra diplomatic and treading the fine line, but I think he could probably be quite rude and quite cutting if he wanted to. He's, like I say, he's got a good mind, but he's very impatient, quite an irritable person. I'm not sure if how much patience he's got to stick with something. And I wonder with this Brexit thing, it's not just a big game to him. Because like people have pointed out, he's got a lot of wealth. Jupiter conjunct Pluto on the South Node. There's a lot of inherited wealth there and a lot of wealth that he's generated himself. He's definitely a very capable person, a very capable speaker. But I'm not quite sure if, like I say, this whole Brexit thing is just a bit of a game to him, and he's prepared to gamble with it. I don't think he could necessarily be relied on to make the right decision, because he's prepared to take a little bit of gamble, a little bit of a risk. However, with this Mars and Pluto on the South Node, there's a great deal of determination in him, and he has got status as a rebel. He is the sort of person who's not scared to go against, he's not scared of being unpopular or going against the grain of the opinion, with the grain of, or the flow of things. It's quite it's a bit of a political rebel rouser in, of course, an extremely dark brown, reserved way. He is looking as well in his chart. He is looking to a degree for the betterment of the others. There is the possibility of that. So I don't think, however, that he is the best leader, because when it comes to it, I don't think he's got enough. I don't think he could be taken seriously enough. He's not bold enough. And as I've heard him on the radio, he's very, very careful about what he says. He's treading very lightly on any delicate issues. We do want to see politicians who are prepared to wade in on the more difficult issues, and I don't think he really is. Brexit is kind of an acceptable issue to be on either side of, and he feels that the position he's taken is fairly safe, and I think he'll stick to things that are safe. When it comes to the more difficult issues, he's going to be a fence sitter. So we can rely on him with Brexit. I don't think we can rely on him with other issues, because deep down, those issues don't affect him because of his wealth and status. I don't think he'd be as concerned about them. He's made this his pet project, his game. It's all about this Brexit for him. I don't believe he's got a similar level of conviction on other issues. And if you're looking for a leader going ahead, they need to be interested in more than only Brexit. Okay, Andea Leadsom is a Taurus. Concerningly, she's also got Sun's opposite Neptune, which, as I said with Amber Rudd, this kind of worries me, because when there's Neptune around, there's a lot of flip-flopping, there's a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety. These people don't have enough of the guts. They might have vision, they might have perception, but they lack this ability to nail their colors to the mast and jump in on the really difficult decisions. So I think that's one of the problems with Andea. I do like the fact that she's got Mercury square Uranus, because I think she's a free thinker, she's an ideas person, I think she's quite bright. She could potentially have be the right person to be negotiating, because she can come up with ideas and cannot come up with out of the box ideas quite quickly. That quite interests me. She's got Sun square Mars. At last, of all these candidates, I've been looking for some Mars connected to the Sun to give some ambition, some drive, some determination, a little bit more forcefulness. She does have that. I don't think she can survive in a man's world. She's not afraid to take on authority. There's a little bit of a rebel against within her. I'm liking that whole thing. That for me is working for Andea. I think she's got some potential. I don't think she's going to do it this time, but I want to see more of her, definitely, in government and in more prominent roles, because she's definitely got something going there. Okay, as I say, I'm a bit worried about some of that Neptune. I'll do Boris last, but let's just talk about Michael Gove. He's got a stellium in Virgo. He is a Virgo. Now, I think he's a very capable person intellectually. He's very bright. He's extremely good with analyzing, with details. He's probably good at formulating strategy and making speeches, but I don't think he's going to gel with people. He's just a little bit too prickly. He hasn't got, he's not projecting with enough charisma. It's all sort of introverted. It's held in. I don't think he can delegate. He has to be micromanaging, and I think he'd be looking over everyone's shoulders. There'd be a lack of trust. Don't think he can lead, because a leader needs to be able to see the small parts and see the big vision. And I just think he has a potential to get really bogged down in minutiae and become a little bit bitchy. I also, just to come back to Javid Reece, Mogg, I do think he's a bit of a stirrer. I think he enjoys stirring the pot, a little bit of gossip, you know. That's one of the kind of difficulties I saw with him, and a little bit with Gove. I thought they could both be a little bit small-minded and petty, and that little issues and niggles and little irritations with certain people could prevent them getting on with the key people that they needed to. So while Jeremy Hunt is far too much of a people pleaser, Javid Reece, Mogg and Michael Gove can be far too abrasive and unlikely to really annoy or get under the skin of a lot of people. They can be too critical and too snide, and I think that might put a lot of people off. In long run, the more exposure those people get, I think the more they are going to be not liked by the public. Although, as I say, I don't really have anything against any of these candidates myself, apart from Amber Rudd, who I've never taken to. Let's come to Boris Johnson. He's a Gemini, but crucially, he has Libra rising and Cancer on the midheaven, which exactly mirrors the UK chart. So for that reason, strong synergy with the United Kingdom chart. I'm feeling good about it. He has Sun conjunct the North Node, which is extremely powerful indication of leadership. He almost thinks it's his birthright to lead. And given his background, his family, his education, there's kind of no surprise he thinks that. Donald Trump also has Sun Conjunct, the North Node. And I think it definitely, the leadership will be thrust on these people. He has a lot of charisma, Boris, and he isn't afraid of tackling difficult issues. He doesn't shy away from them. He wades in. And yes, people think he's rather risque with some of the things. It's ill-advised what he says, but not everything he says is always wrong. And he's not afraid of going for those issues. He has Moon in Scorpio trine Saturn. Now, I've been looking for some Saturn to give me confidence in any of these, and I like that. This Moon in Scorpio trine Saturn says that there is conviction in him, that he is willing to commit to something, to be loyal to a cause, to drive it home. I was always looking at Boris and I wasn't so sure. He comes from a family with such arch Remainers, and of course we knew that he was flip-flopping initially between Remain and Leave. But I think within him there is a determined, gutsy Brexiteer that is deeply loyal and resolved and can work with us. I like what I see there. That was very encouraging to me. Okay, he has Sun also conjunct Venus, so he has a great deal of diplomacy. He can get on with people, really important. And Venus is trine his Moon in Scorpio. So yes, that's a positive one as well for reaching agreement and working cooperatively with people and being popular with the public, because Moon represents the public. So yeah, good. Mars is square Uranus. Excellent. I want to see more Mars. I like the fact that Mars is square Uranus, because that says to me rebel, someone who's not scared to take on authority, someone who it's in their blood to shake things up, to be inspiring, to someone who's not scared to break eggs, to make that omelette. I like that. He has Jupiter opposite Neptune, and the best thing for me, at last, haven't seen any of this in anyone's chart, he has Mars square Saturn. Now, a lot of the traditional texts will tell you that Mars square Saturn is a bad thing. Truth is, Mars square Saturn people can get things done. They have a great deal of determination. They can be very stubborn, extremely hardworking, and very, very purposeful. So I'm really pleased to see that in Boris. He's got more aspects going on between his planets than any of these others who their suns were weakly aspected. Their suns were aspected to planets like Jupiter or Neptune, which were going to make them far too malleable or too people-pleasing or too after self-aggrandizement. I like the solidness I'm seeing with a little bit of Saturn. Not much Pluto going on, but we've got some diplomacy here, we've got some rebellion, we've got a great deal of leadership potential. I think Boris is definitely going to be our leader at some point. I'm very happy if it's true that Jacob Rees-Mogg is going to put all the ERG behind him, and that's good. Oh, hi Chaos. Love watching you and hear the level of research done around your subject. Oh, well, I just find it fascinating, and the more I've looked at the astrology connected to all this, it's just been amazing. It really is giving and giving and giving. So yes, so look, basically, I think that Boris is the standout candidate. When I looked at the charts of the others, I wasn't inspired. And when you look at Donald Trump's chart, you see he is patriotic. There's no doubt he loves his country. He has he's got so many Cancerian planets, very strong connection to his country. With these people, I don't see it. I see a lot of money going on, and with a lot of them an interest in being famous. The whole politics is showbiz for ugly people thing. I see that, and I see some people just wanting to be popular. I really do. Amber Rudd, I just think she was a controlling person who wants to get in there, but in a bossy Leo way. But I don't really feel once she's there, she might think she wants it. She probably would find that if she got the job, she wouldn't want it at all. I don't think it would actually suit her personality. And I don't think she would have the guts to make difficult decisions at all. She would just try and keep doing what Teresa does, keep kicking the ball down the road and hoping for certain problems to go away. So if there are any other leaders that, start coming forward, I didn't have a look at Dominic Raab. He seems quite likable, but I don't really think that he's got enough credentials. Gavin Williamson, definitely not. He hasn't been too good with his story, and so far, as Minister for Defence, I haven't had a lot of confidence in him. Just to say one more thing is, when Boris said about Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, and he was widely castigated for saying that she was out there training journalists, well, as usual, he wasn't totally wrong. I'd say he was more right than he was wrong. What they haven't told us a lot about is that Nazanin was working for BBC Action, which is a part of BBC that are engaged in training journalists in countries like Ukraine and Kazakhstan and Syria. And they train those journalists with a view to, should we say, regime change operations. And the funding for BBC Action comes from certain places like the State Department and places that have a political agenda. So therefore, whether she was out there doing it, she was probably just out there on a holiday. But if you look at it from the Iranians' perspective, they might have looked and thought, well, she works with this group that are involved in places where we know there's been regime change attempts or coups or color revolutions, and we don't want that here. So you can see that some suspicion arose on their part, and you can see that Boris wasn't totally wrong in what he said, because she would have, as part of her job, been training journalists. So the Iranians might have made that assumption. Whatever the truth is, no, I don't know what the truth is, but I'm saying it's perfectly fair to see how assumptions were made on either side. And whatever the truth is, we don't know. Maybe we shouldn't know. It's not our business. But you can easily see how assumptions were made. But again, I think the media were wrong to castigate Boris Johnson for that. He had his facts sort of right in saying it. So there you go. So that's the leadership. I'm really looking forward to seeing the end of Theresa May for obvious reasons that we've talked about. Okay, guys, I hope you've enjoyed that. Have a lovely day. It's coming up for the weekend, and I hope you all have a great weekend. And don't take too much notice of these political people, really, because basically nothing has changed. We still wait to see how it all unfolds. The fat lady has yet to sing.